they're off and running. I'm sure you've all got ideas of what else they might look for, but remember, it wasn't there a few years ago. At least something's happening, at last. So that's the good news. But now is the chance to feed into it. And our second speaker will add to all this, what's going on in the States, Vicky Whittemore, who comes from NIH in Washington, and she's going to fill us in. Vicky was here last year as well, so some of you will recognize her style. Vicky.
So thank you, Ian, and all the organizers for inviting me to speak again. And I think you can talk about doing things, but really it's not until the rubber hits the road and you actually do something and take action that it's important. And so what I'm hoping to tell you today is about, you've heard about our plans in the past, but what I want to do today is to give you an update on what we've done within the past year, as well as thinking about the future. So you can see this is a graph of funding by the National Institutes of Health. And you can see that from fiscal year 16 to fiscal year 17, we've about doubled our funding, clearly on the right path going forward. Clearly not enough. And we are always encouraging investigators to submit applications to us and looking for ways that we can expand the funding that we're doing at the National Institutes of Health for ME. This is a slide showing the importance of this slide is that at NIH, there are 27 institutes, centers, and offices that fund research. And of those, 24 of the institutes make up and send a representative to our TransNIH Working Group, which has just been a fantastic group of people to work with to really figure out ways to accelerate and advance research on ME. We meet monthly and are still continuing to think about strategies and ways to move forward. But what this slide shows you is that in fiscal year 2016, there were 8 institutes that were funding research on ME/CFS, and now you can see that that has significantly increased. And so not only are we funding more, we're funding more of the institutes at NIH are taking an interest and actually participating actively in funding research. So last year, I believe I told you about the centers we were hoping to fund, and we were successful in receiving many excellent applications, and in turn funded 3 collaborative research centers and 1 data coordinating center, and I'll talk about these a little bit more on this slide. So the first is at Cornell University, and the investigator is Maureen Hansen, who you'll hear from later today. And this center is really focusing on identifying biological mechanisms underlying ME, and also looking at, I think importantly, the changes and differences between a baseline measurement and what happens after exercise. So really trying to understand what is happening in post-exertional malaise. The second center is at Columbia University, and the main principal investigator there is Ian Lipkin. And this center will utilize an existing collection of samples that they have from individuals with ME and controls to look for microbial agents. So what could be the triggers that play a role in initiating ME/CFS? And as well, they're going to be doing a comprehensive genetic analysis to identify metabolites that might be present. And then the third center is a detailed look at the immune system, the microbiome, and metabolism. And this is a center led by Durya Unitmats at Jackson Laboratories in Connecticut. So each of these centers has their own approach to working and doing research on ME/CFS. And then one of the things we required of each of these centers was to set aside money that they would use then for a joint collaborative project, which they are just now putting in place. So these centers were funded at the end of September last year, and they're just putting this collaborative project in place, and we'll announce what that is soon. But I think that will be a really terrific way in which to really build the research and capitalize on the different expertise from each of these centers. Excuse me. In addition, we have set up a collaboration with the Canadian Institute of Health Research, through which they have funded a planning grant, and will also be funding, they've just announced an RFA to fund a center in Canada that will work with us. So again, utilizing their expertise and collaborating with those of the centers in the United States to really advance research. And so we're quite excited about that collaboration as well. One of the things that was just announced last week was that we are putting in place a working group. Thank you.
Gin and tonic.
I'm in trouble if it's gin and tonic. So at NIH, each institute has an advisory council that's made up of clinicians, researchers, and patient advocates. And we are putting in place a working group of NINDS Council to help us to really advise and provide scientific guidance for how to best and most strategically advance research on ME. This group is going to be chaired by actually a person who's a friend of mine. He took my old job when I left to go to NIH. He's at the Tuberous Sclerosis Alliance, a really terrific person who really understands the importance of patients and involvement of all stakeholders in research. And so additional members will be invited very soon, and we'll get this group up and running. So just to announce that we invite all of you to come over for the conference that we're planning, Accelerating Research on ME/CFS, on April 4th and 5th next year. This will take place at the Clinical Center on the NIH campus, and we hope to see many of you there. I was just really very taken and saw the importance of the Young Investigator meeting that was organized here in conjunction with the meeting, and we're going to be doing the same. So I've told Richard that we will plan a Young Investigator workshop in conjunction with ours as well. I think that's really critical to build a pipeline in the next generation of researchers. So the last part of my talk, what I want to do is tell you about the Common Data Elements project that Beth mentioned. And NINDS started this project many years ago now, I think maybe even as many as 10 years ago, I'm not sure, to develop a way in which to harmonize information and streamline research by creating a common language. So they've now identified common data elements for many different neurological diseases and agreed in the end of 2016 to develop common data elements for ME. And what this does really is to provide a way in which if you're doing research and you're doing, say, an experiment or looking at post-exertional malaise or fatigue or whatever, that you're reporting your data out in the same way in Sweden, in Norway, in Washington, D.C., such that that data can be aggregated and compared across different patient cohorts. Because what's happening now is individuals report out their data for a small group of individuals, and it makes it very difficult then to compare across studies. And so one of the things that's important to know about this is that it's a sort of a dictionary of the way we're going to describe data, but it's not meant to be carved in stone. It will be dynamic and evolve over time as we learn more about the disease and or learn ways in which to better do research on ME. And an important thing to think about is it's not a database. It's the way in which you use the data to inform and report out data. So again, I said it's common definitions and ways to standardize and develop case report forms so that you can really systematically collect the data. So one of the things that has been really very instrumental, and this has really significantly advanced our clinical trials on neurological diseases at NIH, is a way to use these common definitions and then from those develop common report forms. And we find that that it has really helped to move along the beginning and the start of all of our clinical studies and clinical trials, because it's a way for everyone involved in that study, especially if it's a multi-site study, to agree from the beginning that this is how we're going to move things forward and how we're going to describe this study. So just a timeline and how the method we used here. We started in December 2016. Actually, I announced that we were starting this project in October at the IACFS meeting, and we asked researchers, clinicians, and patients to join us in this effort. We invited additional people who didn't come forward and volunteer, and then split the group, the members into 11 subgroups. And we had a contractor that did this. Beth and I are the leads for this project, but there's no way we could have done the coordinating conference calls and the information that was being shared across 11 subgroups. So our contractor was amazing in helping us with this project. So all of the groups met and had their discussions, came back with their proposals within their domain, and I'll talk about the different domains in a minute, about what their recommendations were for common data elements. There was an internal review before it was released to the public for public comment, and we received a significant amount of comment, revised that, and now they're posted on the NIDS website and available for use. And there will be ongoing review and revision, as I said, so it's a dynamic process that will be ongoing. And the members of the work of these subgroups are now in the process of developing a publication about the process and the results of this whole project that we've undertaken. So these are the domains and subdomains. So you can see here it goes across everything from baseline, which is our simple demographic things like gender, age, and those sorts of things, to fatigue, post-exertional malaise, sleep and pain, neurological and cognitive data, autonomic neuroendocrine, immune quality of life, biomarkers, and pediatrics. And once each group had their common data elements, each element then was also assigned a classification. And so again, the general core kinds of things are things that you would collect across any study. Again, so demographic kinds of data. Then there's always, within any of the common data elements for a disease area, there are disease cores, so things that are specific and required for that neurological disease. And then from there are supplemental things. So not every study is required to study pain, for example, but if you are studying pain, here are the common data elements we recommend, and supplementary as well, and then exploratory, which are really areas of research that, like primarily things like biomarkers, and areas where people are still really doing discovery research and really trying to come to some understanding of whether something may or may not be able to serve as a biomarker. And this is the list of all the people that have participated. And I'll just comment that we had individuals on our group in these subgroups from Sweden, from the UK. And this was actually the first time in one of these projects that we had individuals with the disease, with ME, and patient advocates actually involved in the development of the common data elements. In the past, for all the other neurological disorders, they only commented once the common data elements went public. And we found that it was an amazingly wonderful process to have people involved from the beginning, because you could have that perspective coming from individuals who live with the disease and could comment on things as the data elements were being developed. And I'll just end by giving you this contact information. All of the data elements for ME and other neurological diseases is on our website. If you want more information, you can contact either me or our contractor. And as well, for more information about what's going on with ME/CFS in general, you can go to our website there. And with that, I'll stop and thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Vicky.